I was a director of the original group, Greenpeace Foundation, out of Vancouver until 1979, when myself and David McTaggart basically negotiated a settlement of a dispute where all the other Greenpeace offices wanted to be autonomous and leave us behind. We settled that and created Greenpeace International it was a legal case involved and everything. Right. But it was settled. Greenpeace International then became the organization for Greenpeace, and I was one of 5 international directors from then until I left in 1986.
Well, let's talk about that. So 15 years from when you first set sail to when you left. Why did you leave? Was it a falling out? Was it an ideological disagreement? Were you tired, or did you have a different vision?
I had a different vision. So at the overarching level, I wanted to move into sustainable development and away from pure confrontational politics. I wanted to work with the people who now agreed with us, people in government and industry and labor and everybody who saw the vision of the environment as being so important for the future and cleaning up the environment. I wanted to work with people to find solutions, and Greenpeace was still into being against everything all the time, more or less. So that was at the higher level. At the specific policy level, my fellow directors, coincidentally, none of the others had any formal science education. They were political activists, social activists, what I call environmental entrepreneurs. By this time, you could seek a career in environmental politics. They didn't have any science, and they decided to adopt a policy to ban chlorine, the element chlorine, worldwide.
Which is part of salt, right? I mean, it's in so many things.
It is not only part of salt, it is also adding it to drinking water was the biggest advance in the history of public health. And most of our synthetic pharmaceuticals, if you look at your cold and flu medicines, you'll see a little Cl at the end of many of them, are based on chlorine chemistry. So chlorine is actually the most important element for public health and medicine. But the reason it is because it's toxic to bacteria. And Greenpeace has this naive vision that we should rid the world of everything toxic, which means about half the elements in the periodic table have to go. It's just completely nonsensical and illogical. But with chlorine in particular, I tried to convince them of these things. We had long arguments, but they eventually adopted a policy to phase out chlorine worldwide, and I more or less had to leave. Phase out chlorine worldwide, it made sense to restrict certain chlorinated compounds, but their opposition to DDT, the environmental movement's opposition to DDT, they made a big mistake because, yes, it was being used for agriculture to kill insects on a broad basis and too much. It should have been restricted there, or even banned when better chemicals came in. But they also banned it for malaria. And that was a health issue, not an agricultural issue. DDT had 2 very distinct functions. And the control of malaria it's by far the most effective way to do it. And it's not particularly harmful to people. As a matter of fact, there's no actual evidence that DDT is harmful to people at the levels that are used to control mosquitoes that spread malaria. So 50 million people died in the 50-year period that DDT was banned. Even the World Health Organization and USAID banned the use of DDT during this period, and only a few years ago did they re-adopt it as an important tool in fighting malaria, and we will see the rates of death from malaria go down dramatically now as a result.
And you mentioned the millions of people who die from malaria because DDT was banned. You talked about genetically modified food. I mean, that says the word Frankenfood has been so drummed into our vocabulary, I think people naturally recoil from it. But just making wheat that's drought resistant, I mean, making rice that has more nutrition in it, these little things, you know, feed millions. Tell me a little bit about that. I want to hear an environmentalist's case for modifying our food.
It's classic propaganda to say Frankenfood, killer tomato, Terminator seed. These are all borrowed from scary Hollywood movies, which are totally fictional. And the campaign against genetic modification is based as much on fiction as those movies were. You see, every academy of science in the world, including the Pope's scientists, says genetically modified food should be used to alleviate hunger and improve nutrition.
Give me some examples of products that could help, are helping, that Greenpeace is against.
250,000 children go blind every year in the rice-eating countries, particularly in urban slums in India and Africa, from vitamin A deficiency, which we need for our eyesight. Rice has no vitamin A, beta-carotene in it. Swiss scientist Dr. Ingo Potricus in 1999 invented golden rice by putting genes from corn, the same genes that make corn yellow, which is beta-carotene, into rice, which makes it golden. Greenpeace has successfully stopped the introduction of that for 12 years now. In other words, another 3 million children have gone blind.
And is there
and
any
die
science?
at an early age.
Is there any science behind it, or is it just a great way to make some more stunts and some fundraising left?
There is zero science behind it. Every Academy of Science, every Food and Agriculture organization, every scientific body has said there is nothing different in terms of health impact. As a matter of fact, GM foods have been studied so much more intensively than conventional foods, which often don't have the right vitamins in them and maybe have allergies in them.
So who's actually banning golden rice? I mean, the word golden rice actually makes it sound delicious to me. Can I buy golden rice?
No,
is there
you can't.
anywhere in the world you can buy golden rice?
No, it's still in the lab, but the good news is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has taken it on and will make sure it gets introduced in Asia.
And they're good liberals, by the way. I mean, those are not right-wing. I mean, he doesn't need any more money. He's about
they're
the
a wonderful organization. What they're doing generally is they're professionalizing international aid from what was a pretty goody two-shoes kind of thing that didn't have a lot of professionalism in it. For example, the person they've hired to do their food program, their agricultural program in Africa, is a former Monsanto executive / scientist who is a molecular biologist himself, and his company was bought by Monsanto years ago. He became a senior executive in Monsanto, and now he is going to Africa with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And Bill Gates is brave enough to withstand the criticism. You know, that Monsanto is like some kind of international pariah.
They call it Monsatan.
I know, they make seeds, you know, the seeds to grow things. There's a seed company.
It's what a propaganda war. Politically, I don't have a lot in agreement with Bill Gates, but the fact that he stands firm and rests on science rather than politics impresses me. My esteem for him has gone up. You told us how from 1971 to the early 80s you helped grow Greenpeace, turn it into a multinational corporation. That's really what it is. It's based in Amsterdam, $350 million a year annual revenues. It's quite a different beast than the dozen guys in a boat back in the 70s, eh?
It is. It's not volunteer anymore, and it's shifted its focus to issues that I don't believe it can ever win because it doesn't deserve to win them. Campaigns like being anti-nuclear. Nuclear is the fuel of the future. Campaigns like being against using genetic science to improve our nutrition and medicine. That's obviously something that we should be doing. Campaigns against forestry. Forestry is going to be with us until as long as there's trees. I mean, they grow with the sunshine instead of having to use big factories to make them, like when you make steel and concrete. So they're not going to win those campaigns, but they have a small percentage of the population that is going to fall for their propaganda and their misinformation and fear campaigns and send them money. And so these campaigns, the downside of never winning is that they have a perpetual fundraising campaign.